And over to you, Tim.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's class, the Winsor & Newton Halloween Decoration Cards class. My name is Tim DePack, and I am from Winsor & Newton, and I'll be your moderator today. I'm being joined by Mandy Peltier, who'll be your artist instructor for today's class. And Mandy will be taking you through today's class by providing information about the products being used in the class, showing you how to perform some of her favorite watercolor painting techniques, and creating these spooky cards using watercolor paint from the Winsor & Newton Cotman Watercolor Sketcher box set. She'll also give you a sneak peek at some of her upcoming classes. I'll provide the link for you for those classes in the chat if you wish to sign up in advance. Before we begin, for those of you who'd like to print out the sketches for the project, they can be found in the link that is on the chat box over there. Also, upon completion of this class, you will receive a survey in your email inbox. Please let us know what your thoughts of the class are, how we did, and if there's any particular topics that you'd like to see Mandy perform in the future during one of her classes. We'd really like to know what everybody would like to see. As Felicia said, the class is being recorded, and within 24 hours, you'll be able to replay this and go back and work with Mandy. So as we're about to begin, please feel free to paint along with Mandy and sit back and relax and enjoy the class. And then you can watch the replay at a later date, complete the project. And also one thing, Mandy will fill you in about why she has her face paint today. Very, very interesting. And with that, over to you, Mandy.
Thanks, Tim. I saw the comment about where is your costume. I liked that. So hi, everyone. I'm Mandy Peltier. I'm really excited to be here today for this class. I guess I'll fill you all in on my face paint first. So October is a busy month for me. I'm actually teaching 4 of these classes this month. This is the first of 4, but one of the 4 is going to be a face painting class for Snazaroo. So Snazaroo is owned by the same parent company as Winsor & Newton, which is Cole Art. So I'm really excited to get to do a face painting class. All 3 of my kids are going to be involved and a couple of friends of my kids. So I'm going to be showing you just a few fun, easy face painting techniques that you can do this holiday season. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my other camera so we can get started on the project we're focusing on today. Did I say the date though of face painting? If I didn't, it's October 21st. Which is a Thursday night, 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So there's my plug for that. All right. So I always start my classes with an overhead view of the supplies. So you can just make sure you have everything you need so you can successfully do the project along with me. So I'm once again using the Sketchers Pocket Box set. There is an interesting thing I'll need to note about this in a second, but I'll go over the other supplies first. You will need a glass of water, some paper towels, a pencil, and an eraser for drawing the outlines. A smaller artist palette. We're only mixing 2 colors today, so it's another sort of manageable class. If you've watched some of my previous classes, there's been some classes where we mix 11 colors, but my last few classes and my next few to come are a bit more limited in terms of their palette. So that's good news. And we're using 2 round brushes today, a number 10 and a number 4. And you should have 3 5x7 sheets of cold pressed watercolor paper. I am using the Winsor & Newton professional watercolor paper today. So it took 2 sheets to create 3 5x7 sheets of paper. And that's because we're making these 3 designs. We're going to make this black cat and these bats in front of a moon and this crow, and they all use a similar technique. So you'll get a lot of practice with it. We'll be doing a lot of water blooms and drips and splashes of paint on it. So it'll be a really fun class. So we're actually going to start today. Normally I start my classes by having us all sketch the outlines, but we're actually going to get started today by mixing our paint colors. So I'm going to set some things aside other than what I need to mix our paint colors. And then I'll also talk to you about that, that note I have about the Sketchers Pocket Box set. All right, so I'll go ahead and start with that. So Winsor & Newton recently updated their Sketchers Pocket Box set, and it's now called the Sketchers Pocket Set. So box has sort of been taken out of the name. So I wrote this project before the set was updated. And so here's the ironic thing. There's only one change from the old set to the new set, and that is the blue color that's in the upper right corner has been switched. So what is intense blue in the old set is now cerulean blue in the new set. And I used intense blue for this project. So I'm going to keep using intense blue for this project because I'm going to assume that most of you have the old set. If you've purchased the Sketchers Pocket set within the past maybe 2, maybe 3 weeks, then you will likely have the newer set. But don't worry, I'm actually going to show you today 3 ways to mix black with the Skechers pocket set. So 2 of the 3 ways you can mix with either set you have, and then 1 of the 3 is the one that I'm going to use, and it's with the old set. So I just want to point that out. You can't even really tell a difference. It's just the upper right corner blue. The other blue ultramarine is the same. All the other colors are the same in the set. So I just want to make that note. All right. So with that, with your palette, with
Hey,
your
Mandy,
number 4. Yes.
really quick, before you get started, I just want to check, does everybody still see Tim, or do you see Mandy's overhead? I just want to make sure that everyone can see the overhead. So give
I
me a
can
quick
see the
second.
overhead, Felicia, from my end.
I do too. So someone is saying that they can only still see you. Okay. So I think everybody, let me do a little quick switch around really quick. Give me one quick second and let's put it back on Mandy. Like there's a little delay for some reason. Mandy, if you can go ahead and continue, and I'll just kind of work in the background.
Sure thing. Do you guys love Felicia's voice? I have told her before she should do books on tape. I just think she has the most calming, soothing voice. I love it. Okay. Thank you, Felicia. All right. So take your number 4 round brush and just swish it around in your water, give it a stir, help those bristles absorb the water evenly. And then just as I do in all my other classes, I'm going to use the number 4 brush as if it were a spoon. Normally we place the same number of scoops of water into however many wells we're using, but today we're going to do it a little different because we need a lot more black than we need of the sort of chartreuse color we're going to mix. So place 2 scoops of water. So just like a spoon, just use your brush and do 1 scoop, 2 scoops into one well on your palette. And then into the other well on your palette, put 5 scoops on there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this just kind of gives us some clean water to mix the colors into, and just kind of will help us achieve a proper paint to water ratio. All right, so we'll start by mixing the chartreuse, and that will be the well in your palette that only has the 2 scoops of water on it. So I'm going to start by doing 4 passes or so of lemon yellow. So lemon yellow, whichever set you're using, is top row, far left. And when I say a pass, I'm going to take my wet brush. I'm going to run it into that lemon yellow a handful of times. And I'm going to stir it into those 2 scoops of water, wipe my brush on the edge of the well, and that's 1 pass. I'm going to repeat that 3 more times for a total of 4 passes. And this doesn't have to be a slow thing. I'm just moving real quick, running my brush, digging it into that half pan, stirring it into the well, and then wiping it on the edge of the palette. And you could keep it this bright lemon yellow color. I like to make it more chartreuse looking. So what I like to do is just a few strokes with my brush over sap green, which is on the bottom row, second from the left. So I just like to take my brush, run it over the sap green a few times, stir that in, and you'll see that it gives it sort of a chartreuse look. This is one of my favorite colors. I wouldn't necessarily say, if someone asked Mandy, what's your favorite color? I don't think I'd say chartreuse, but every time I see it, I love it. I love this color. So that's how we're mixing chartreuse. It's with 4 passes of lemon yellow, and then just a few strokes with your brush over the sap green. I would call it like a half pass. So you're not really running it over a handful of times, more just like a couple of times. And then you can go ahead and clean your brush and blot it on your paper towel. And then I want to show you how to mix black. All right, so I am going to mix black today using intense blue and cadmium red pale hue. So the upper right blue and the cadmium red pale hue, they are opposites on the color wheel. I've talked about a lot in my classes. The opposites on the color wheel, when mixed in equal parts, will give you a nice neutral color. The old set with the intense blue and the cadmium red pale hue, it just mixes a really beautiful, really dark gray that looks almost like a cool black. It's really deep dark. It's really lovely. And the newer set, the cerulean blue and the cadmium red pale hue doesn't really mix together to create a gray that looks so dark that it looks black. It's much more neutral looking. It's more of like a brownish gray. So I do not recommend, if you have the new set, that you mix your black in this manner. I only recommend it if you're using the old set today with intense blue. So if you're using the new set, how I would recommend you mix black today is with ultramarine blue and burnt umber. I have also mixed black in my classes a lot using these two colors. It's usually either these two colors or these two colors. So when I say intense blue, you use ultramarine blue if you have the new set. When I say cadmium red pale hue, use burnt umber. So you're basically just going to be mixing these two until you achieve black. And another way you can also mix black is with the 3 primary colors. You could do a pass or so of cadmium yellow, alizarin crimson, and then add enough passes of ultramarine blue until it looks black. So there's 3 different ways you can do it. You can do it with the 3 primary colors. You can do it in the old set, intense blue, cadmium red pale hue, or you can do it in either set using ultramarine and burnt umber. I'm actually going to mix it all 3 ways. So this will give you at home lots of time to create the black that you like, because sometimes it takes a little back and forth. And I'm going to show you on a scrap sheet of paper the difference between all of them. So I'm going to start with the one that I'm actually going to be using for the projects, and that is intense blue and cadmium red pale hue. Again, if you're at home and you have the new set, use ultramarine blue and burnt umber. So I hope that makes sense. I know that was a lot of colors thrown your way, but I'm going to start by mixing an equal number of passes of cadmium red pale hue and intense blue. I'm going to see what I end up with and then adjust from there. Essentially, if you're mixing with intense blue and cadmium red pale hue, if after mixing an equal number of passes, your paint looks too blue, you need to add more orange. If your paint color looks too orange, you need to add more blue. If you're using ultramarine and burnt umber, if it looks too navy, you need to add more burnt umber. If it looks too brown, you need to add more blue. So you're going to keep adding one to the other until they cancel each other out and you have what looks like black. So I'm going to start by adding 4 passes or so of the cadmium red pale hue and the intense blue. And then I'm going to kind of gauge from there what I need to do to adjust. We are trying to create paint mixtures today that are maybe slightly more paint than water. So if it feels too watery as you stir it, or if you try on a scrap sheet of paper and it looks really transparent, you're going to want to add a few more passes to that water. We want it to be nice and pigmented, to maybe have a 60 to 70% opacity. So I just did an equal number of passes. I know it's hard to see at home, but this looks like kind of a midnight blue or even like a really deep dark turquoise color. So it doesn't look black. So I need to add more orange because it looks blue. And I'm going to keep adding orange until it looks black. The intense blue is such an intense color, like they really named it accurately. It really does influence heavily whatever you add it to. So with the ultramarine blue burnt umber route, you will probably need to add more blue than you will brown. Whereas with the intense blue cadmium red pale hue route, I need to add more orange than I do blue. But it's just sort of going to depend on how you're mixing. But this is looking pretty black now by adding some more orange. I might add just a touch more orange, just for good measure there. Okay, I think I'm pretty happy with how that looks. Okay, so now I am going to show you really quick. You don't need to do this along with me. I'm just doing this for educational purposes. I'm going to mix the other 2 blacks using the other 2 ways that I showed you. We have time today. So I'm going to just do a couple scoops into 2 more wells on my palette. But again, this is just for educational purposes. And I'm going to quickly mix a black using the technique of ultramarine blue and burnt umber. And then I'll show you on a swatch how they all look. They're all pretty similar, but they also have slightly different hues to them. I think slightly different values as well. I think the darkest value is the one mixed with the intense blue. And the lightest value is probably the one that's mixed with the 3 primary colors. All right, so for the 3 primary colors, I'm going to use cadmium yellow. Might do just a couple passes of cadmium yellow, and then a couple passes of alizarin crimson, which is going to give us sort of an orange shade, right? Because yellow and red create orange. But then once we add the blue to it, it's first going to look brown, like it does right now. And we use this in my apple class. But if I keep adding blue to it, it's going to take on more of a black appearance. And this is starting to look a little navy, so I might just add a little bit more red, a little bit more yellow. You just sort of play around with them until you reach black. Okay, so I think I'm there. All right, so with my little scrap sheet of paper here, the black I mixed using the 3 primary colors looks like this. Hold that up here. The black I mixed using ultramarine blue and burnt umber looks like this. I think this is more of, I think the three primary colors gives us sort of a neutral. I think the ultramarine blue and burnt umber gives us more of a warm. And I think the intense blue, cadmium red, pale hue gives us more of a cool. So I think that's kind of neat. If you want more of a neutral tone, a warm tone, or a cool tone, you can achieve it with this set. All right, so with that, are we ready to get going? We are going to be painting these 5x7, what we're going to call boo cards. We're going to be painting them sort of in turn. We're going to start by painting on the moon for the bats and then set that aside. And then we're going to paint on the eyes for the cat and then set that aside because we want the chartreuse paint color to dry before we go over it with the black. And so while the paint dries on these two cards, we'll do the crow in its entirety, and then we'll return to the cat, and then we'll finish up by painting the bats over the moon. So that's sort of the progression we're going to take today. So with that, I have my little outline here. You know that I always like to keep it really close to me when I'm doing my outlines. And I have my graphite pencil. And if you were in my last class, which was the autumn wreath just a couple weeks ago, we free painted on all of the elements on the wreath. We are going to free paint on the bats today. So even though I did provide for you an outline that shows you exactly what you can trace or draw for the bats, in class today, we're going to freehand paint them to give them more of a loose look. The only thing we're going to draw for the bats is the circle for the moon. So I'm just kind of gauging where the moon is on my outline here. And I'm not going to worry about being perfect with my circle. And I'm just going to draw a circle on my 5x7 sheet of paper. That's about the same diameter as what I see on my outline here. What is this? Maybe 4 inches all around. Maybe not even that big. Maybe it's more like 3.5. I don't have a ruler nearby, so I can't measure it. But I'm just trying to get it to look similar to what I have here in my outline. So there it is. Get the camera to focus there. All right. And then I'm going to take my number 10 brush. So we have the 4 today, we have the 10. We will use the 4 in a couple spots, but we're going to use the 10 for most of it. I haven't used my 10 yet, so I'm just going to swish it in the water, help those bristles absorb the water, wipe it on the edge of my water glass, maybe even blot it a couple times on my paper towel to remove excess water. And then I'm going to use that chartreuse color I mixed. And I love the combination of chartreuse and black. Isn't that such a cool color combination? And I'm just going to take my number 10 brush and I'm going to paint on the moon. Just going to fill it in. And then after we paint on the moon, we are going to place some water drops on it or some water blooms. And that is just going to help the moon sort of have some texture and sort of look more like the real moon looks. And because we're going to be adding some water over top of this watercolor paint, that's why we need to do this first, so it can dry before we're ready to come back in and paint the bats over top. So I have just gone over this, filled in the whole thing with the chartreuse paint color. And then what I'm going to now show you the water bloom. So I'll kind of hold this up a little bit closer to the camera, hopefully, so you can see. And I'm going to place my brush in my water. And you can kind of shake it a little bit to get off the big drops of water. And I'm literally just going to place drops of water. You can do just with the tip of your brush to make them small. And you can do as many as you want. I might do 5 or 6. And you can see how it starts to separate from the paint. And as it dries, it's going to create texture. I'll show you, I'll hold up the finished one so you can see how it sort of dries and there's some hard rings. Well, that's from the water blooms, and that's going to happen. You can see as it kind of settles into the paint, more and more of that is happening, that texture. So it looks like I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6, but you don't even have to do that many. Just do as many as you want. But, and then once you're done, once you have your water blooms on your moon, set this aside so it can dry. And then we'll return to the bats last. And then the next card we're going to start with is the cat. So I'm going to pull over my finished cat. I'm going to pull over my paper for my cat. And we will go ahead and start by drawing the outline for the cat. Now, ironically, I have his nose and his mouth and his chin in the outline, but you don't need it. Because if you look at my finished painting, you can't even see his nose or his mouth or his chin. It was more just so you could see what the cat looks like. We really only need to draw the outer outline of the cat and the eyes. So I'm going to start, you can start wherever you want. You can start with the eyes, you can start with the ears. I think I'm going to start over here and draw the left side of his body and then his ears, his forehead, and then go down the right side of his body. So I'm just going to sort of gauge where this starts. And I'm just going to, you can see the lines are kind of wavy. They don't have to be perfect lines. I'm just going to sort of draw what I see here. It's really okay if this isn't perfect. This is meant to be sort of an abstract class. And every time you make it, it's going to look a little different because where you place your water blooms, where you do your drips, where you do your splatters, it's all going to make your finished project look a little different. And then his eyes are just football shapes. So you're just going to draw football shapes. So 2 arches that mirror each other. And if you need to erase and make corrections, please do that. But again, I'm not going to draw his nose and his mouth and his chin. I'll give you guys a second to finish drawing your cat. It's harder than it looks to draw these wavy lines in the outline of the cat. I've done this a lot of times because I've been practicing for this class, and I also did a lot of drafts designing this project. And you'd be surprised at how hard it is just to draw the outline of a cat. So I'll give you guys just a second here. But all we're going to do for now is we're going to fill in his eyes with the Chartreuse paint color. I personally think it's going to be easier to paint in his eyes if you use the number 4 brush versus the number 10 brush because it's a little bit smaller. It's not as big. So I'm going to use the number 4 brush. And you don't need much Chartreuse on your brush because you're painting in a very small area. And I'm just going to fill in each little football shaped eye with that Chartreuse paint color. And that's all we're using the Chartreuse for. So that's why we didn't mix a whole lot of it. So you wouldn't have a bunch on your palette unused when this class is over. But of course, I do always recommend you use these classes really predominantly to learn, especially when you take them live. And then you can always redo it, especially when this is uploaded to YouTube tomorrow and you can pause as needed to keep up. I think that's always a good practice. So that's all we're doing for the cat for now because we need his eyeballs to dry. So I'm going to set that aside. And now we're going to do the crow. So I have my crow on the back side here. So I'm going to do the same little setup I have, where I have the finished crow, the outline of the crow, and I'm going to bring over my 5x7 sheet of paper. I like to start by drawing the eye for the crow. So I'm going to sort of take stock here to see where I need to draw the eye. And I'm going to just draw a circle for the eye. Just a circle for the eye. And then I like to then draw what's above his eye because I can better gauge the spacing. This is maybe 1/4 of an inch spacing, his forehead above his eye. So I might start right above his eye and then do this side over here. And you can see that this is not a finished bird. We don't have any legs. We just have a hint of his feathers and his head. That's because we're going to do all these water drips and we want it to be sort of loose. So we're just kind of giving the impression, enough of an impression so you can make out that it's a crow. We're not trying to be super, what I would say, realistic today. I taught a class on a bluebird. And that one we did, we not only drew the whole bird, we also put him on a little branch. So you can always go back and watch that class if you're interested in learning how to paint birds. And a little birdie has told me birds are under consideration for a class next year. So stay tuned and that might happen if you like birds. I might have more to offer you in the future. In that regard, I love painting birds. They're just, I think they're a lot of fun to paint. All right, so I'll give you a second to catch up on the crow. And if you wanted to, you could paint the crow's eye, the chartreuse color. I prefer the crow just being all black. But if you wanted to pull in the chartreuse onto every single design, you could do it to the crow's eye, but I'm not going to do that today. We're going to just stick with the black. And I'm going to start by painting on his eye. And I'll hold the finished one up. If you look at his eyeball, I think it sort of looks like a Celtic cross sort of in the middle of his eye. So it's like where it's real wide in the middle and then like skinnier on the sides. So I'm going to use my number 4 again, just for his eyeball. And then I'll switch in just a second to my number 10. And every time I touch my face, I forget that I have face paint on. So is it black paint on Mandy's fingers or is it face paint on Mandy's fingers? Who knows? All right. So I'm going to start by outlining the outer edge of his eye. Just going to go all around the outer edge of his eye. I think this is exactly how I started my Eastern bluebird. So it must just be how I like to start my birds. All right. And then after I do the entire outer outline of his eye, I'm going to place a kind of circle right in the middle of his eye. And then I'm going to place some lines that go through it to kind of make it look, again, like I think it kind of looks like a Celtic cross. And then you can sort of enlarge the pupil on the eye. The goal here is just to have a little bit of negative space in the middle of his eye, because you want the negative space is going to be what catches people's attention, right? It's going to be what gives it interest. You can see even in my finished one, there's a little bit of negative space. And that's just me not trying overly hard to cover every square inch of the paper. That's going to help give it that loose impressionistic look. And I know that it's so hard for you to do that at home. You just want to cover everything. So just try to resist that urge. And then I'm with my number 4 brush, I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to add a little bit of black paint to the bottom half of his beak, just under this line we drew for the middle. So I'm going to go just under that line we drew for the middle of his beak. And I'm just going to add a row of black there. And then I'm going to switch to my 10. It's just easier to put it there, I think, with the number 4. And I already had it in my hand.
Andy, just real quick, you're just blotting that. You're just dipping the brush in the water, blotting it, drying it off, and then dipping into the ink directly, right?
Well, I put it in, well, when I clean my brush, I do always blot it. So I'm not adding more water to my paint. Is that what you mean?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
So you're just using the water that's mixed with the paint. That's it right now.
This water. Yeah. The water that I mixed the paint with.
Okay.
Yes. Sorry if I'm not understanding your question correctly. I'll try and help you know when I blot my brush, just so you guys at home can follow along. But I am going to use my number 10 now. It's still moist from when I used it a second ago on the moon, so I don't need to wet it or anything. And I'm going to put this into my black paint. And I'm going to use a dabbing motion. Dabbing motion, or you could even call it like a vertical hatching stroke. I'm just going to take my brush and I'm just going to place like little dashes. And I'm just going to loosely work my way around the outline of the crow. So I'm going to kind of start up right where his beak is, like right where his beak meets his forehead. I'm going to start some dab strokes, go right above his eye. All right. And I'm going to sort of work my way down his backside, I guess we could say. And you can change the direction of your strokes. But you see, I'm not trying to be smooth with my lines or even stay within the lines. This is no different than the bluebird. I'm just kind of doing some loose strokes here along his backside. And I'm going to put a little bit more black on my brush. His topmost feather, I'm going to fill that in with black and then maybe just do a straight line right up here. We're going to do the same thing to the other 2 parts of his feather. Just do straight lines. I'm not worrying about negative space. It's okay if there's some negative space, just straight lines that are parallel. Okay. So do this initial part. And then we're going to do something I have done in some of my previous classes. We know we have black on our brush. We can create a diluted version of this color. If we take our brush, we just put it in the water for 1 second. We wipe it a few times on the edge of our palette, and then I can take this diluted version and I can just continue to dab and blot what's remaining on my crow. Again, I'm not trying to be real thorough with this. I'm also going to do above his beak. I'm going to try to leave a little bit of negative space right through the middle of the beak. A little bit under his eye, a little bit more to his forehead. So this gives us a good base here that already has some different values going on, right? Because we have the pure black we used. We have this lighter version from just dipping our brush in the water for a second. I can even just add a few more lines to his tail feathers if I wanted. But again, we're not trying to be super exact here. And then this is where I'm going to show you how to do the drips. We're going to do some more water blooms. this is a good time to show you. In a few weeks here, October 26th, I have this coffee class. I love you, a latte. It's not yet up on the Michaels website. It will be soon. But as I was practicing this class and developing it, I have a scrap sheet of watercolor paper here. So I'm going to use the back side of this as for a scrap paper to sort of help me do the water drips without making my surface dirty. So I'm going to start with the water blooms. Same thing we did with the moon. We're going to place our brush in the water, and I'm not going to do it to his beak and to his eye. So just below his beak and his eye, I'm just going to place a few drops of water on the crow randomly, wherever. And you can see how they're already starting to sort of bloom out there. Isn't that cool? How it creates that kind of effect. And then this is what I'm going to do to get the water runs. I'm going to hold my paper upright on this scrap sheet of paper. And I'm going to tap to see if I can get any to sort of just happen organically. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Today it's not wanting to cooperate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to force them. So I'm going to put my brush in the water again, and I'm going to tap where I want the drops to occur. I'm going to tap with my brush and then tap with my paper. And you see how that forced a drip? And I'm going to do that wherever I want a drip. I'm going to put probably, I don't know. Oh, and there one happened organically there. This is 5. You can do as many as you want. You can even turn it to the other side if you want and do one this way. I think that always looks a little cool if you have them kind of going from a few different directions. So this is what it looks like here. And I think it's really cool when you mix your own black. Do you see how you can see a little bit of the blue showing through? How the color even kind of separates on the paper, and then you get a few different shades going. And so I'm also going to do a few splotches or splatters. So how you do that is you're going to take your brush and you're going to just kind of flick it onto the paper. You can even add more black to your brush and do it so they look a little bit darker. So you can also put a few flickers on there. And then this is going to be where I make a few adjustments. I am going to put a little bit more black on my brush. I'm going to just dot where his eye is because I want his eye to be the darkest so that it really stands out. I might put just a little bit more on his beak, maybe a little bit more on his wing. I mean, this is all a matter of taste. Maybe a little bit more down his right side. All a matter of taste, however much you want to add. And you can even just do a few random strokes on the paper if you want. I mean, this is your artwork if you want to make it kind of random and dirty. That's exactly how you do it. And this is the crow. And this is pretty much the same technique we're going to use on the cat. So every time you make it, it's going to turn out a little bit different, but look how cool that is. Fun, therapeutic. You can be messy, and it's still going to work in your favor. So I'm going to set this aside. For now, I'll pull it over at the end so you can see how it looks as it starts to dry. And then we will work on the cat next because the moon probably still needs just a little bit more time to dry since we added so much water to the top of it. All right, so for the cat, I'm going to pull the cat down. I'm going to pull the finished cat down. We're going to do basically the same thing with the cat as we did with the crow. So you'll get some extra practice here. I'm going to start by basically outlining the whole outer edge of the cat. I'm also going to put some paint where his nose and mouth and chin would be. And then we'll do the same thing with the water blooms and the drips and the splatters. Okay. So put some more black on your brush. And I'm not going to do the dab so much with the cat though. That's sort of what I use for birds. For the cat, I am just going to sort of go over the outline with my number 10. I mean, you can do the dab if you want. But I think it has to do with just bird feathers, and it just creates some good movement on the cat that we don't need so much with the cat, or with the bird that we don't need on the cat. So for the cat, I'm just painting it on over the outline. I'll go ahead and fill in his ears a little bit too. And I am going to be careful, and I'm going to outline the outer edges of both of his eyes with the black. There we go. Just try to be real careful not to totally cover the chartreuse. And then I'll kind of go down where his nose was and where his mouth was with a little bit more black here. All right. And then I'm going to put my brush in the water for just a second, wipe it. I'm just going to roughly fill in what is left before we do the water drip. So same as what we did with the crow. Just want to create a myriad of values. And I'm not trying to make a straight line at the bottom of the cat. I want there to be some movement. Now, some of this has started to dry. If you look at mine, some of that has started to dry. The first outline I did, I can take my brush and just sort of run it over, and that sort of reactivates it and smooths it into that diluted version that I'm painting on now. So the cat looks kind of messy right now, doesn't it? It doesn't quite look like what we see here, but it will. Might add a little bit more right to the middle here. All right, and now we're gonna do the blooms. So same thing, you can do as many blooms as you want. You're just gonna place your brush in the water for a second and try to avoid the eyes if you can, and just place a few water drops all over. They can be big ones or little ones. And then I'm going to, once again, hold my paper upright, and I'm gonna tap. Oh, I got one automatic one organic one. It's always nice when they happen organically and you don't have to force them. But you know, if you're a mom, sometimes you really have to encourage your kids to do what you want them to do. So sometimes you just have to force these blooms. Or a dad. I'm not trying to discriminate. Tim's a dad. All right, here we go. So I'm forcing some of those drips. And I'm going to do the same thing I did with the crow, and I might force a couple drips going the other way as well, because that just looks kind of cool, I think. And then you can do a few splatters with what's left on your brush. You can put a little more black on your brush and do some splatters that way. You can just do a couple random dabs in other places. You can always add more water blooms too. Even you don't have to stop with the first bloom you did. You can always add more if you want it to be more extreme, the effect. And even if you wait for this to dry for a few minutes and then go back over with some more water blooms, that can look really cool as well. But the last thing we're going to do to the cat is I'm going to take my number 4 brush again. And I'm just going to real carefully-ish just paint on a thin line right through the middle of the eye, but it shouldn't go all the way to the bottom of the eye, just 3/4 of the eye right through the middle to serve as his pupil, if you will.
Mandy, can you hold that up when
I sure will.
See that?
Yep. I sure will. Let me just get this pupil on here. I'll hold both of these up, the one I did with you today and the original. You can see they look different every single time, but they all look cool no matter where you put your water blooms or your splotches or your drips. It looks cool either way. You could kind of use this outline to kind of serve as an owl too, if you just switch things up a little bit. I think it's really the eyes that make it look like a cat. But if you made the head maybe even just a little bit wider and more circular shaped, you could probably make an owl using close to the same outline. All right, and while you guys finish up on the cat, I need to mix more black. So I'm going to mix more black. If you want to hear how I did it again, I'm going to just do 3 scoops this time, not 5. And I'm going to do an equal number of passes of the intense blue and the cadmium red pale hue. Normally I would clean my brush before putting it into the cadmium red pale hue, so I don't make it dirty like this, but just because of time, I'm just going to go right for it today, and I'll worry about it later, cleaning up the half pan later. But, you know, when I first started painting, I didn't really grasp the importance of making sure your pans are clean, and I would never get the colors I wanted. Well, whatever color you have dried on top of another color is going to influence the color you're trying to mix. So like right now, if I tried to mix an orange by using this pan directly as is, I would get more of a pumpkin orange because there's a little bit of blue mixed into the orange. So just know that it's always, you can always easily clean off your half pans by wetting a paper towel and wringing it out, and then just running it over the half pan until whatever color's on there is removed. All right, so I've mixed some more black. Actually, it looks still a little blue. Let me put a little bit more orange in there. And then we'll be ready to do the bats. So just like I did with my wreath, since we're going to do some free painting today, I'm going to demo for you how to paint the bats. We'll paint 2 together, and then we'll finish up today by painting the actual card together. So I'm going to set the cat aside. And I have a scrap sheet of paper to show you how to paint the bats with. And we're going to use the number 10 to paint the bats. So I'm going to just make sure my 10 is clean. So I'm going to swish it in the water, blot it, blot it, blot it. All right, so let me pull over the finished bat. So essentially how we're going to do the bat, you can see that they get smaller as it goes further down. We're going to start with an arch on the top, a triangular shape for the ear, a small arch, triangle shape for the other ear, and then another arch. And then we're just going to do a series of arches, however many you can squeeze on along the bottom to meet up with the top arches we do. So we're just drawing arches of different sizes, really. So I'll show you this big one, and then I'll also show you a little one, and then we'll do a big one and a little one together before we actually work on the card. Okay. So I'm going to put a little bit of this black on my brush. I'll see if I can hold this up a little bit closer for you. We'll see if I can maintain control without working right on the desk here. But I'm going to do an arch, and then triangle, little arch, triangle, big arch. Then I'm going to do a series of arches along the bottom, however many you want. We're going to fill in the outline. And then we're going to finish up each bat by just doing a few drops of water over top. So I'll show you a little one now. So little one, you're just going to do a baby arch, baby ear, using the tip of your brush, baby arch, baby ear, and then another small arch. And then however many arches on the bottom you can squeeze in, fill that in, and then finish with just a couple water blooms. We can also put little legs on the bats. You can see some of these have little legs. How you do the legs is you just put a little black on your brush, and you literally just at an angle, press the brush, the bottom middle of the bat, and it will just create little legs for the bat. So you're just basically touching the brush on the paper just to create little lines for the legs. Okay, so let's try this together. Let's do a big one, and then let's do a little one, and then we can finish up today by doing the bats on this card. All right, so let's see. I'm going to use these other 2 blacks I mixed so I don't tap into the one I just did. Okay, so we'll start with a big one. So let's make a big arch together, and then 2/3 of a triangle, small arch, 2/3 of a triangle. So we have the outline for his ears, and then another big arch. And then let's make a series of arches at the bottom, however many you want. We'll fill it in. I'll go ahead and do his 2 little legs. So bottom, middle, a dot and a dot. And then we'll put a few water blooms right across the bat. And then let's try a teeny tiny one. So we're just going to do a small arch, small triangle, even smaller arch, small triangle, small arch. Do a few arches along the bottom. We'll fill that in. Do a couple little legs on the bottom. So you can see these are really loose. They're not meant to be perfect looking. That's exactly why we're not abiding by an outline. We're just free painting them on because they are not meant to look perfect. I mean, if you want them to look exactly like mine, then trace the outline. But for purposes of this class today, just try your best to free paint them because they're supposed to look pretty loose. And then after we paint on all the bats, we're going to finish it off the same way we did the crow and the cat in terms of tapping, forcing the water drips, doing some splatters, etc. All right, so with that, I'm going to pull over my bat card. Let's see, is the moon's dry? We're good. And I'm going to start with this one up here. All right, so I'm just going to use this as kind of a gauge for where I need to place my bats. And I'm going to do an arch, ear, small arch, ear, arch. And I'm going to do some arches along the bottom here. I'm going to fill that in. I don't leave a lot of negative space on these bats, but you can if you want. I'll try to leave a little bit today. And I'm going to do a couple little legs. I think the legs just are kind of a fun touch on the bats. And then I'm going to do a few water drips right across the bat. And this is going to take a minute to dry. So it's going to give us something to hopefully have some organic drips when we hold the paper upright in just a minute. And then I'm going to blot my brush to get those water drips off my brush. I'll do this one here. This one's sort of at an angle. So an easy trick, you can just take your sheet and just rotate it a little. And that will help it. It'll make it easier for you to put the bat at an angle. So I'm going to do another bat, maybe that's slightly smaller than the one I just did. So it's an arch, ear, small arch, ear, arch, and then some arches along the bottom. We're going to fill it in. Give it a couple little legs if you want, and then a few water drops right across the bat. See how that made it easy to get an angle, probably too much of an angle. I probably shouldn't have rotated it so much. And then I'm going to do a bat that sort of layers the moon. That's about the same size as the first one we did. So I'm going to do an arch, ears, forehead, ear, arch, and then arches along the bottom. Couple little legs. You can do the legs either before you fill it in or after. Doesn't really matter. And then water drops. Don't forget those water drops. All right, and we're going to start to get a little bit smaller with our bats. A little bit smaller with this one, but really small in the last two. So I'm going to do this one now. So remember, it's just arch, ear, forehead, arch, and then arches along the bottom. And just fill that bat in. Give them some legs if you want. And some water drips. And now we're going to do two small ones. If you can't squeeze in as many as what I have here on this paper, that's okay. Just squeeze in what you can. So I'm going to do a smaller arch, smaller ear, smaller forehead, smaller ear, arch. Arches along the bottom, legs, water blooms. And then the last one is the smallest. It may not even look like a bat by the time you're done, but when you compare it to all the other things, anyone looking at it will be able to tell it's a bat. So I'm just really trying to use the very tip of my brush to do the outline for the small bat, and just the tip of my brush to fill it in. And then this one probably only needs one water drip. And then after you have those painted on, bring down that scrap sheet of paper again. And I'm going to see if I have any that can happen organically, any of those water drips. I'm not having much luck with the organic water drips today, so I'm just going to force them. Just going to tap my brush with water on it where I want the water drips to occur. Do as many or as few as you want. You can hold your paper upside down and do a few that way also. I have one that wants to start here, so let me help it out. There we go. Can't get this wrong. And as it happens, you'll have the paint kind of separate. You'll get those few hues going that I think is really cool. Might do a few splatters. Put a little bit of paint on my brush and do a few thicker splatters. You can add a few more water blooms to your bats if you want, if the paint had already started to dry, and that will just create a little bit more texture on them. But every time you do it, it looks different, but I love that about it. Every time looks different. All right, so that is the bat. And we are really good on time. It's 2:52. All right, so let me hold this one up so you can see, and I'll hold the original one I did when I wasn't teaching. And I'll pull back down how the crow looks, and I'll pull back down the cat. And I also want to show you, I had mentioned I'm teaching 4 classes this month, and this is the first. And I already showed you the coffee one, but I'll show it to you again and give you the date, and then I'll show you the one that I'm teaching in a week. So here's all of those, the ones I did with you today and the originals. But in a week, I am teaching this Hello Gorgeous class. And this is another loose project. We'll be using the student grade Winsor & Newton paper. So it'll be a quick, loose kind of project, and we'll have time to even paint on the lettering in this class. We don't always, sometimes we shortcut and use like a watercolor marker. That's actually what we're going to do for this class because the coffee takes just a little bit longer to paint. So October 12th is Hello Gorgeous. October 26th is the I Love You a Latte coffee class. And so I hope you'll be there for those, as well as my Snazaroo face painting class on October 21st at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you're not already, you can follow me on social media. My handle is @MandyPeltierArtist. And if you go to my website, mandypeltier.com, you can see all of the previous classes I've taught. I have them on my website under published classes, tutorials, projects, and I have all the YouTube videos embedded and the files you can download for the class. You can do that on YouTube as well if you search under Michael's classes, but it's really great having you here today. I would love for you to hold up any of the cards that you were able to finish in the time we had together so I can see. Oh, I love that bat that I see someone holding up. Let me switch to gallery view here. Oh, they look gorgeous. And you guys can always make these bigger. So I made them like 5x7 in size, but nothing's to say you can't just enlarge the outline and make it bigger if you want it to be wall art versus like a card. But these look amazing. Oh, I love that cat, Cindy. I love all those drips on it. Oh, the crow. Oh, it looks so good. You guys did awesome. Yes. How did you guys like a sort of abstract, looser technique? Did you dig it? Have you tried like drips and splotches before? Tell me in the chat. I'd love to know. Oh, good. Great. All right. Well, I hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and I hope to see you again soon.